Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So good afternoon or evening, I guess,
Mm-mm.
for you. And tonight we're going to be reviewing modules 11 through 13, which is for quiz 4. And the first thing I want to mention is that you have two remaining assignments to do. The first, the first assignment that you have to do is write a discipline uh, personnel letter.
Mhm.
And in that letter, you will have a make believe individual who is needing to be disciplined, and it'll be a reprimand letter that will go into their cumulative folder. Okay. And we've given you examples once again, things such as that. And the way to craft the body of that letter uh, is kind of important. I suggest to keep it to about 1 page. Don't go too crazy. Be very specific on what the concern is. Provide ideas for remediation, and that's that. So throughout this course, we've asked you to uh, either in following each of the last few modules to do this audit of a school district's human resource department. Are you waiting to do that at the end when it's due? It's not really due until like December 13th. Or have you been doing it gradually?
I am working on it.
You've been working on it. Okay.
Yes, because I interview one of administrative administrators, and she helped me to answer the question yes or no at
Yes.
the school, and I will be the person to provide comments, right?
Okay. So what I'm wanting you to do, what I want students to do on this assignment is think about the um, content that you've learned about what should take place in a um, human resource department, and then match it with what actually it's like in the school that you're working with. And of course, I remember that you did was a Catholic school, wasn't it?
You mean last time for the interview?
Yes.
Yes, a Catholic school.
And that's who you're going to be doing this
Uh,
audit for. And the thing I remember is the
I do
principal.
another school.
Oh, okay.
This time I another, yeah,
Oh,
because
okay.
I contact with the principal. Maybe she was very busy, so
Okay.
I
Yeah.
haven't heard anything about her. So I
So,
asked
so
that.
the bottom line is, of course, human resource departments take all kinds of different shapes, and different people are involved in many of the functions that we've been talking about. At a Catholic school, so much uh, burden is put on the principal of the
Mm.
school. They are kind of a one-person human resource department. They do the hiring. They let people go. They although they typically aren't the person who is actually providing the pay. They usually have some sort of accountant or some sort of secretary. Usually there's a secretary that's involved. And so yes, near the end, and that is a key assessment. That's the only key assessment that we have in this course. So that audit, and it won't be due until December 13th, I believe. Okay. Okay. So, uh, questions on those two assignments?
So for the audits, I for the comment part, so I just by kind of I reflect all the information we already learned in the class, and I will give comment
Yes.
on that the audit. Yeah.
And if you see that they aren't doing something that you think, based on what you've learned, they ought to be doing,
Mm.
then make a note of that. Okay. And this, I think a specific example I could give you is, of course, schools do indoctrination or orientation or onboarding in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways. Although some of the basics are going to be the same. I mean, you have to sign your contract. You have to let them know your deductions for pay. You have to let them know some of these kinds of things. And that's going to take place regardless. But then the uh, taking it to another degree typically is done with onboarding, where you are giving giving individuals information about the culture and doing those kinds of things. So basically, that's what that would be. So the quiz coming up will have 11 multiple choice questions, two true and false questions, and two short essay questions. And the short essay questions focus around teacher evaluation. Okay.
Yes.
It'll be around teacher evaluation. And of course, you guys have been doing a great job with the quizzes and also uh, you're able to discern, I think, from our sessions here, the important information, and you're able to retain that and present that on the quizzes. So the first objective that we have here, and we were dealing with professional development to start, and of course, there's a lot of different pieces to professional development that we could talk about. But tell me a few of the elements of an effective professional development program.
Um, I think the first thing about we think that um, an effective professional development, right?
Yes.
With the collaboration, um, the second thing about the
Okay.
flexibility.
Yeah. Let me just expound a little bit on that.
Mhm.
So, with the view of collaboration is, too often in many school districts, the upper management makes a decision on what is necessary or what's needed, what teachers need, for example, in professional development, and they present it, and that's it. A better way to go about that is to collaborate with the teachers, find out what the teachers feel they need, and then provide that information. So that's the collaborative portion. Okay. So go ahead. What's another? Uh,
And I think the second thing that the flexibility or choices, so we can let the teacher have a choice
yes,
to choose
exactly. And I'm big on professional learning communities, and with that, having the teacher make a decision as to what they feel they want to learn and then giving them resources or pointing them toward resources in which they can, in fact, learn. So, uh, very, very important piece to an effective professional development program. Other ideas?
um, the other idea that we just not only think that the professional development that's just at a fixed period during the time they
Oh, okay.
study, but it is continuous.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
for them to
So,
practice.
yes, so professional development is in fact continual. And even for someone like me, uh, it's continual. This morning I had something happen with my computer. I'm on my other school site and I'm getting ready to do some grading, and I go to uh, click on the button that gets me into the material that I need to look at, and the little hand doesn't show up. And I'm going, what could that be? And so I fiddled around. I turned it. One of the things that I always, when I taught technology, to tell students is to play around. So uh, I turned all the computer off, turned it back on, still nothing. I look and here my internet was out. So the issue was the internet. So needless to say, I learned a little something today. We'll call it professional development, where when I have that issue again, I will know to look to see if my internet is on. And if my internet's on, yay, fix it. And that worked, and I was back in business. Other ideas?
Um, about the feedback or support
Yes,
the administrators.
yeah, it's always good after professional development has been presented, whether it's a one-time deal or it's, like you said, ongoing. It's good to get feedback, find out what people liked, what they didn't like, what they found, what they thought was useful, what they didn't think was useful. So, evaluating the activities and getting feedback on those activities is important. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to add another one here is, and I find this happens a lot, is when dealing with professional development, you're dealing with adults. You're not dealing with children. And so therefore, you have to use adult learning theory versus child learning theory. And one of the things about adult learning theory is that adults learn best when they're presented something and they get to apply it right away. That right there is one of the good things. Obviously, uh, one of the bad things is you don't just lecture to adults. And in my years, I've seen too many professional development programs where they were just lecturing to the staff and expecting them to absorb it and then go from there. Uh, can you come up with another one?
That the connection between the classroom and their experience with the program, so it will be attractive, so they can connect
Yeah,
around the yeah.
exactly. It has to be usable information. It has to be relatable. It has to mean something. It can't just be out there all by itself. There has to be a purpose behind it. And typically that purpose is always to improve um, teaching in general. Um, so have a clear set of goals and be open to new concepts. Model. Very important to model what you would like individuals to learn. So that does a good job in describing effective professional development. Okay, kind of going hand in hand with that, and maybe we can kind of skip over this a little bit, but understand professional development planning. So we go from here's an effective professional development program. Now we're talking about the planning of a program. Can you come up with an idea about how you would plan for a professional development?
At first, that we have to provide the purpose or the goals of the program that we as the teacher have to carry out it.
Yes, has to be guided by goals.
Yeah.
There has to be goals. So, in planning, what's the goal? What's the mission? What do we want to accomplish? Definitely. Okay. Other parts of the planning portion.
Um, how they deliver the
Yeah.
program.
Yes, the delivery method, and I'm going to show a chart here in a moment, at least if everything works, where I'm going to show you the various different professional development models that exist out there, and there's quite a few actually. Another thing about adult learning theory and planning is give individuals choice. Adults like choice. So rather than forcing the professional development down their throat, give them a choice. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to consider the cost. You got to consider the time. You should evaluate. And last but not least, you should showcase or celebrate what's been accomplished. So I'm very proud of my work as a superintendent in bringing technology into my school district. Uh, I was in the beginnings when, as you might guess, when technology was taking off and being uh, a method of individuals to learn, a vehicle for students to learn. And fortunately, the school district poured a fair amount of money into professional development, into uh, computers, into software, things like this. And so I decided that we were going to showcase our work. And so actually at the beginning of the next school year, I had a breakfast for all the staff. I also included the classified staff as well as a way to showcase and to celebrate what we have learned. Very important to celebrate. Okay. Now I'm going to go to this chart. Well, let's see if this works. I don't know if you can see. Can you see anything?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. And that's not really the one that I wanted to show, but I guess it's the one that's going to show. So, obviously in this chart, I go through the various delivery methods. And of course, the first one listed is the one that's most commonly used or has been most commonly used, and that is the stand and deliver. The expert gives information and delivers. And of course, in the meantime, there's pros and cons to that. And you can see down the list there the variety of all of those. Uh, for the test, I you don't need to memorize any of that information. Just kind of look at it and be aware that regardless of whatever is used,
Yeah.
there's definitely um, a benefit and a disadvantage. So each have their benefits and disadvantage.
Can you explain the one, two, three, four, the fourth column about the research? So that
Research. Oh,
yeah, professional program. So you have to use the book or one of research study. Based on that, you
so when I did this chart for my technology book. I have a,
uh,
I have a technology book out there. And so when I was doing the research, I was putting together all these various models. I
oh
I discovered or came across individuals who either came up with the idea or supported the idea. And so that was the research part of this.
yeah,
Okay. I
yes, yes. Thank you.
think we're back to normal now. Okay. So once again, no need to memorize that, but you just want to take a look at it. And obviously, we go from the presentations to face-to-face courses. Uh, I mean, if there were, well, there are teachers in this class. If a teacher's in this class, it would be considered professional development, although they might not look at it that way. Action research, which is less known. Of course, the one that's the most popular these days is online courses uh, and webinars. Obviously, reading and keeping up on those kinds of things using online discussions and creation. Uh, in my tech book, I come up with a the process. Personally, I believe in professional learning communities as professional development means. And of course, that's one of the objectives. Our next objective is to define professional learning communities. And so, what is a professional learning community?
Mm, that means the communities maybe indicate indicates that the people involved are the professional learning communities that they learn from some resources.
Yeah, there's a team of individuals who are sharing and meeting and discussing whatever the topic might be. And that is the definition of professional learning community. Uh, so in my text, I believe in this so much and did additional research regarding it. And some of I didn't put this in in your course, but what I suggested a school administrator does in order to present, have teachers use professional learning communities as their professional development is the first thing is to have the teachers decide what it is they want to learn,
Oh,
kind of what we've said before. And then the administrator guides them toward a variety of online resources like Khan Academy, particular courses, and lets them know that here are some vehicles in which to receive professional development uh, through professional learning communities. And then the teacher investigates on their own what they want to learn using those resources. And then we get around to the evaluation phase, and the teacher is keeping track of what they've learned, where they went to learn this information. And then when it comes time to evaluate, the the teacher is expected to demonstrate through some means, whether it be in a class, whether it be um, making a podcast or video, where they present their findings, so to speak. So that's how I view quality professional development. Now, the offside of this is that let's say that a teacher has a class management problem. That's a big problem. And there's lots of resources out there to help teachers overcome um, class management issues. But the teacher themselves, they don't acknowledge that they have a problem. They want to investigate scientific inquiry or whatever. Okay. And so at that point, the administrator is going to say, no, 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 no. You are not doing well in managing your class. Therefore, you need to focus your professional development on tactics to improve your class management skills. And so that's just, and you know, once again, we've talked about, and you guys indicated that transformational leadership is one of the most popular, worthwhile leadership styles. However, you know, as I've told you guys before, I subscribe to a variety of different leadership styles. The situation that I explained to you just a minute ago, that's going to require a directive approach where the administrator says, no, 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 you're off base. You need to do this to guide them back. So having that arsenal of different styles is quite helpful. Look like are you want to ask a question?
I have a question that when we talk about the professional learning for
Yeah,
the teacher,
yeah.
so we will not limit them just for face to face, right? Face to face learning, but we can provide them kind of online resources that they have a choice to choose. They
Yes,
learn.
yeah. You know, there's just so many resources out there for learning on the internet that it's just endless. And so lots of things that can be done.
Yeah.
So uh, we then we then got into we are in a so uh, the next objective is to understand strategies to plan professional development around artificial intelligence. And um, So we are in the early stages of artificial intelligence being used in a variety of ways within uh, our our country, whether it be government, whether it be business, regardless. Artificial intelligence is creeping into uh, the conversation. And back to my book for a second, I did a lot of research around artificial intelligence in education. And what I discovered, not surprising to me, uh, countries like Singapore, even Vietnam, were ahead of the United States in using artificial intelligence for learning. So here's what's great about artificial intelligence. I'll give you the broad look first. So artificial intelligence has the ability, when properly provided the correct pieces of input, they can store all of the various proper teaching methods. They can also analyze an individual and then direct them to their specific needs, back to class management. So with artificial intelligence solutions, a teacher who has class management issues can use the system based on artificial intelligence to actually look at teachers who are managing their class effectively. And the same thing is true with professional development. There you have all of these different models, all these different ideas, and artificial intelligence has the ability to zoom in on specific things for an individual. In the strategy is to, first of all, you got to understand the basics of artificial intelligence and make sure that there are questions that are being asked and that ideas are shared that are necessary. The biggest thing with professional learning communities using artificial intelligence, you've got to give the individual time. They have to have time to investigate. It can't be rush, rush, rush. And another, back to adult learning theory, uh, giving individuals hands-on learning opportunities. That right there is extremely important. Making space for collaboration and then giving them self-paced courses, self-paced workshops, self-paced conferences, and guiding them towards those kinds of things. So that's AI in education. I just heard today, this was fascinating to me. I'm watching TV, and the Secretary of Education was speaking to a bunch of reporters, and the question came up about artificial intelligence. I can't remember the school district. I wish I could remember the school district. But in this school district, they are having students use artificial intelligence for 2 hours each day. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that the student has their own computer, they have their own headset. Artificial intelligence solutions has all this information out there, and then knows the student, understands the student's skill level, and gives them activities pointed directly to them. Now, what does that mean? And by the way, if I were in school, if I were superintending today, just like I did when technology came to play, and I jumped on it because I knew that it was going to be the next wave. Artificial intelligence will be the next wave. So back to how this works. So in this school district, for 2 hours a day, the student is plugged into their computer with the AI resources, and they are learning on their pace. What's that mean in specifics? Let's say that I always like to use mathematics because mathematics is the easiest to explain. So a student is in the fifth grade. When they're in the fifth grade, they ought to be able to do single column addition, right?
Mm.
That's probably a first grade kindergarten skill. Well, let's say that you have one student in the class who can't do that. They can't do it. And so therefore, their 2 hours in mathematics, they are doing activities to help them learn how to add single column addition. In the meantime, same class, you have an individual student who is very gifted in math, and they are able to do algebraic equations. That same student, now, algebraic equations for a fifth grader would be an advanced skill, right?
Yes.
So therefore, rather than that student just repeating the same crap that they already know, they are given activities directed specifically to algebra. So here a student is, one can't add single column addition. Here's another student in the same class who has algebraic, can is ready to learn algebra. And so through artificial intelligence, you can provide the needs for both students. So that's the best. And the same thing is true with professional development. You could have a staff member who needs content information. They didn't get enough, they weren't good enough or whatever in their undergraduate programming with content information. So they're given content information. Okay. So the next objective is to identify the various models of we're moving out of professional development, moving into teacher evaluation, which was, I think, module 12. And so with that, identify the various models of teacher evaluation and determine which model you feel is the best for your situation and skill level. First of all, let's just talk about the various models. And I know that these models were adapted from the text. Okay. Quite honestly, when I look at these models, I mean, I can understand all the models. I recognize the models. I can even figure out what's best to some degree based on my understanding. So I'm just going to rip them off real quick. There's the adversary model. There's the art criticism model. There's the decision-making model. There's the discrepancy model. There's the goal-free model. There's the goal-setting model. There's the peer assistance model. There's a portfolio model. There's a remediation model. There's a remediation model. There's a student achievement system analysis and transactional. Now, with that, I'm going to jump ahead. And for me, back to teacher evaluation, I like the portfolio model because back to so you're talking to the teacher, you have directed them to do some professional learning community work. They decide what they're interested in. You agree with them that that's an area whether they should invest or investigate. And from there, they provide you, the evaluator, with resources showing you what they learned in their professional development. And they have a portfolio of information. Okay. The other one that I think has merit is decision-making model. And with the decision-making model, obviously within the evaluation, you're making decisions about how well the person is performing. Okay. Goal setting is another one that I think is reasonable, where you're setting goals on what you want the teacher to accomplish. So back to just a side note. So one of my principles, and you'll kind of understand, I think you'll kind of understand this. So one of my principals in his school had a lot of teachers buying resources without a purchase order. Okay, that's a no-no, as I think you hopefully remember.
Yeah, I
Can't
remember last semester you.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can't do you can't. It's an illegal purchase. Okay,
Mm.
so and the only in Ohio the only way that you can pay for those resources is first of all somebody has to discover that there isn't a purchase order backing up the item, and then second you've got to take it to the Board of Education, and the Board of Education has to pass a resolution called a then and now certificate, meaning that after they pass that, you'll pay for it. The district will pay for it. Okay. My Board of Education was not happy with this building principal because this building principal, on average, had probably, well, we'll just say 10 of these a year. That's a lot. Now, it was a high school. Coaches are the biggest violators of this. Doesn't matter. You have to follow the law. The board directed me to clean this up.
Mm.
So what did I do? Once again, back to the authoritative person. In his evaluation, another tactic in evaluation is to bring the person in and talk about what the goals are for their year. And you're going to use that as a guide when it comes down to um, evaluating them. And since the board put it on my plate, meaning it was my problem, because I was the superintendent, obviously, and all things are their problem. Uh, I I was going to pass that along to where the root of the problem was, and that's in this guy's building. And so, in his evaluation, we wrote that he was to have zero then and now certificates. All his teachers were to follow the proper procedures. Now, my recollection was that it got much, much better. There were still a few that slipped through, but we were able to check that he did accomplish that particular goal. And I was happy that he did that because it was going to be, I don't know what would have been the next step with my Board of Education. I mean, to be honest with you, probably the next step, had he not been able to clean it up, is I probably would have had to write him up and put something in his permanent file telling him he's got to clean this up. So we're going to get into progressive discipline here in a minute, but that's a progressive discipline process. Okay, much more importantly is understand the teacher evaluation program in Michigan and talk about the approved programs. So I know this is all foreign to you. States typically guide teacher evaluation. States decide, in some instances, the forms that are going to be used. They decide the format of which is going to happen, and they're going to go about that. So can you recall one of those approved teacher evaluation programs in Michigan? Check your notes.
In 2015, right?
Yeah.
The Public Act 173.
Okay, that's the law. Okay, so there are three different ways or formats that school districts can use in Michigan to evaluate teachers. The first one it's called the Five Dimensions of Teaching and Learning. It's Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching. When I saw that, I was so tickled. Here's why I was tickled. I revamped our whole evaluation system when I was superintendent. And I use this as the framework, the backdrop, because number one, it touches all the bases of teaching, from planning and preparation to the learning environment to the experiences that the teachers learn, and principled teaching, the being ethical, I guess. So, and they have 4 domains, and within that format, not only do they her resources provide you very specific things to look for when evaluating using that format. So I was very familiar with that. So that's number one. And I'm going to go on record to say, without knowing, I'm going to say that probably if you polled all of the school districts in Michigan, it would be one of the highest that's used. Charlotte Danielson's Framework for Teaching. The
So
second,
you said every state have a different guidance for teacher evaluation.
yes. Well, first of all, we'll run through the basics. First of all, as you remember from school law, you had school law, right?
Not yet.
Anyway, in school law, education is delegated to the states. So the states have the authority to make major decisions with regard to education in their state. One of those areas that states have the authority over is teacher evaluation. They may have set in law the number of observations you have to have. They might, in this particular case, they might say, here's an approved resource, and you have a choice. You have a choice. In some states, they aren't as directive as that. In some states, they kind of push it down to the school level and let schools make decisions. And that's more like Ohio. Ohio allows schools to make those decisions. But anyway, the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning, Charlotte Danielson's Framework of Teaching, is one of the approved teacher evaluation approaches that may be used in Michigan. The second one is Marzano's Teacher Evaluation Model Improvement. I'm On a personal note, I am less familiar with that particular model, although I know that Marzano is one of the leading experts in education. So I can't really say as much about his program as I can Charlotte Danielson's. The last one is called the Thoughtful Classroom. I know absolutely nothing. I mean, obviously I've heard of Marzano, but I know nothing about the Thoughtful Classroom, but that's a third option. So a school district, knowing that these are the 3 models you have to use, they select which one of the models they're going to use and then kind of go forward with that as far as setting up the teacher evaluation. So moving off of the formal, and of course that's formal learning. Moving off of the formal learning, we move into an informal way of evaluating teachers, although it might not even be an evaluation, doesn't have to be an evaluation, is classroom walkthroughs. Do you remember reading or remember the resources
I
on?
remember last year when I went to my internships, just one day to interview the professor, the principal, and she will shadow her.
Yeah.
And for the classroom walkthrough, for each class, she said she did it every day. And each class, she just stopped for 5 or 10 minutes. After that, take a note, and right away she sent the feedback to the teacher. And she
Yep.
said every day she did that. So,
Yep. That's a class. That right there is a very good description of classroom walkthroughs.
yeah.
So it's an informal way, in a non-evaluative way, of observing a classroom by the principal and or other leaders. There's about 5 or 6 different models of classroom walkthroughs that can be used. I can't remember the names of any of them, but what I do remember is in many cases the walkthrough involves a look for. So the principal starts the teachers out with a conversation on, and we'll say look for. So the teacher tells the staff, this month, when I do my walkthroughs, I'm going to be looking for classroom management. I'm going to be looking for how well you manage your class. And so when they go into that class for that 5 or 10 minutes, they are zoomed in on classroom management. That's just one example. Another.
I think that a good, that a positive impact
Oh
when
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
looking for.
This is, in my view, walkthroughs are so much better than teacher evaluations because it is collaborative. It is intended to be helpful. It gives the teacher feedback. It lets the teacher reflect, and there's documentation that is garnered as well to prove one way or the other. So a very, very useful and tickled that many schools use walkthroughs even today, like you just witnessed when you were shadowing that principal. So, that's an informal way to go about looking at teachers' work. The next one is classroom observation, which is a
Almost, yeah.
more formal way. So tell me about classroom observation. What's a classroom observation?
So I think class observation, as you said, that a formal observation. That means they have rubric for that, right? Or
Yes.
kind of reviewing a systematic view, reviewing with the rubric. And I think if the principal use a lot classroom observation, maybe make the teacher feel uncomfortable
Yes.
and they
Yes.
feel threatened because they cannot experience the close relationship between the principal with the teacher or with the classroom, or they just come to check them how they are doing and give kind of feedback or give the warning for them. So
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
And so, back to state law, in some states, I can't speak specifically to Michigan, but in some states, they subscribe to you have to have 2 evaluations a year
Mm.
to evaluate a teacher. So, and that observation has to be at least 45 minutes in length. Now, if it's not in the state law, many collective bargaining agreements have specifically set aside about teacher evaluation, and they go into how many observations you have to have, the length of time that you have to have, uh, how it's going to be accomplished, and those kinds of things. Okay, so yes, that's a very formal way of starting the evaluation process because it usually is in the beginnings or a part of the beginnings of the process. Okay. Uh, Obviously, there could be a checklist, an observation checklist. We're looking for this, and this, uh, which is a much more deeper look at uh, teaching. So just a real quick basic on the teacher evaluation process using observations. So at the start of the process, the principal and the teacher sit down and they have a pre-observation conference. And at that pre-observation conference, they discuss the lesson plan, the objectives, the content, and the focus for the observation. Then there is the observation. Once again, usually the principal goes into the class and is looking for this, and this. And so therefore, they are recording what they observe. Okay. And then the follow-up The post-observation is after the evaluation is done, the principal has done all the paperwork, and they present that paperwork to the teacher, and it gives the teacher an opportunity to reflect upon the lesson, to provide information. The observer can provide their insights, their feedback, what they saw as strengths, what they saw as weaknesses, and using that once again as the evaluation. So obviously the benefits to observation is you have hands-on look at what's going on, and it's not just a 5-minute look, it's a little bit more lengthy look. Although the downside is that and in some instances within the collective bargaining agreement, the teacher the principal has to tell the teacher what day and time they're coming in to observe. That's sometimes subscribed in the collective bargaining unit. So you're right. The challenges are, first of all, the observer's bias, teacher anxiety, the time constraints, the lack of follow-up support. So that's the standard process for evaluating a teacher. Now we're moving now into the discipline, the 13th module. Differentiate between non-renewal and termination. What's non-renewal mean?
That means when the people sign a contract,
Okay.
and if they violate some rule or policy, they cannot be renewed.
Okay. So what you just described is termination. Okay. In termination, what that means is that they have violated a law, and therefore, by violating that law, they violated their contract, and they are then subject to termination. And there's a process that you have to go through according to federal law, process you have to go through in order to terminate a teacher. Non-renewal, on the other hand, is this: we have a contract. The contract is over. The school district decides that they are not going to give that teacher another contract, and so they non-renew them. A little bit less aggressive than a termination. And so termination could be done for professional misconduct, incompetence, policy violations, criminal activity, whether outside the school or inside the school, and those rise to the level of possible termination. And there are 3 different specific situations in which an individual may be terminated due to their conduct. And the first one is immorality. Now, what would take place for a teacher to be terminated based on morality?
For example, discrimination.
Okay, if it was discovered that they were discriminating against an individual or a class of individuals, then they could be terminated for sure. Probably the situation that finds itself, sadly, the most for teacher termination due to immorality is when a teacher is having sex with a minor or one of their students, and that rises to the level of termination, to say the least. The next one is gross insubordination. Gross insubordination.
Can you explain that?
Okay, so with gross insubordination, what that means is that an administrator gives an employee a directive, do this, and they refuse to do it.
Disobedience.
They're being disobedient, yes. Now, the law says gross insubordination. So gross, that word in itself means that it has to be very, very evident that this person was being insubordinate. They were given very specific directions. They very specifically disobeyed. Hard one to prove in court and is not used that much. Another one is gross incompetence. The word incompetence means they can't do the job. And so therefore, if they are unable to do the job, and it's grown to the point of being very, very bad, gross, therefore they could be terminated. The last one is neglect of duty. And neglect is really very few people will probably get terminated due to neglect, unless it's a really grievous situation. But neglect meaning, for example, a teacher is expected to be on the playground, and they get busy and they miss it. That's neglect. They neglected their duties. And so, once again, if they did that over, so it starts with neglect. The administrator brings the teacher in, has a conference, says, you must meet with the students at the playground every day. And then the staff member doesn't do it. Now we have gross insubordination. Okay. The next one is understanding that there's this nexus between the teacher's conduct off campus and job performance. And that can lead itself to termination. So, for example, if a teacher is drunk out in the public, make a skeptical of themselves, and it becomes it comes on it gets reported in the news, and all of a sudden it's in front of the administrator's face. Okay, the question then becomes, is this conduct causing harm to students in the classroom? And maybe they've lost respect. Because they lost respect, they can't control their class. And so therefore, there's the nexus between the off-campus misbehavior and the performance in the classroom. And there has to be that nexus. There has to be that direct relationship between the two of them for termination action. We're almost done here. The next one is the difference between substantive and procedural due process. In due process, what that means is you have to go through a set of regulations in order to dismiss a person. Those specifics were in Cleveland Board of Education versus Loudermill, U.S. Supreme Court case in the 80s. And the outshoot of that is the Supreme Court said, this guy was just let go. He wasn't given a chance to tell his side of the story. He wasn't given a chance to defend himself. He was just said, you're gone. They took it to court, went to the Supreme Court, all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, he gets his job back. And by the way, from here on out, here are the procedures school districts must follow in order to terminate someone. First of all, the individual must be given written notice that explains to them the intent for the dismissal, the reason for the dismissal. Second, they have the opportunity to an unbiased hearing, a fair hearing. Third, they must be told what the reason for this job action is. Then they are given a chance to respond to the charges. They have the opportunity to be represented by counsel, and then they may appeal it to the school board or the local court of jurisdiction. That's procedural due process. Substantive due process is just the principles behind the Constitution of fundamental rights. And there's just that substance. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing is to discuss. So, once again, teacher evaluation is established by state law, and so is it tenure established by state law. Now, do you know what tenure is? What does tenure mean?
Tenure. That's mean when the individual or the teacher they had the right to continue with with the property interest of the school.
Yes, all right, all correct. So a person receives tenure based on state law and also collective bargaining agreements. And it says exactly what happens after you go from being a probationary teacher to the status of a tenured teacher. In Michigan, the state law says that, first of all, the Board of Education is required to provide probationary teachers with a definite written statement as to whether his or her work was effective through that evaluation. The statute provides that a probationary teacher who is under a 5-year period, who is with the district for 5 years, they have the right to tenure unless they're notified in writing that they aren't going to qualify. And so that's the Michigan Teachers Tenure Act. Okay. And last but not least, we're going to get into defining progressive discipline. First of all, can you tell me what is progressive discipline?
That the step, for example, if one employees they violate the policy of the school or something, so the principal will follow the step. The first that they give them the warning,
Yes.
verbal warning.
Oral
If
warning.
yes, if they don't improve or to be better, they will write the letter that the warning for them, and
Yes.
if they continue keep that a misbehavior, so they will make them to bring them to the board, right? Education.
Then we're dealing with an official reprimand.
Oh.
And so that's what, so let's put this in perspective. So you have a teacher who is late to their class a couple of times. And kind of unfortunately, the principal walks by, he sees the teacher's not in their class, and he has to take action, brings the teacher in and says, hey, you got to be in your class at such and such time. They've just given them an oral warning. Okay. So a couple of weeks go by, lo and behold, the teacher is back to being late in class, and the principal decides that it's time to take a little bit more aggressive action. They skip written warning and they go right straight to official reprimand. Person is reprimanded for not being in class. Now, in the meantime, that reprimand establishes the expectation. And now, if they fail again, and it can be written in the reprimand what the next steps are going to be. For example, we might write in the steps, buy an alarm clock. I'm just teasing. But so anyway, in that reprimand, if they violate that situation, then you now have a case where you could find that individual in insubordination because they've been told to do something. Now, and if it gets really, really bad, it could be gross insubordination, and they would be fired. So back to my situation, there as a superintendent, I had a staff member, or there was a staff member in the district who was known to be getting a little handsy with women, girls. He was a middle school teacher. I got wind of it. I talked to the principal about it, and I said, Mr. Principal, you will write an official reprimand regarding this activity. And this individual will never, ever put another hand on a middle school student. He followed through. He did the official reprimand. Lo and behold, 1 year later, he does it again. It comes to my attention. And in the meantime, we do an investigation, and we ultimately led us to getting ready to terminate him, although we allowed him to resign instead. So that progressive discipline goes from step to step to step, but it could go to me. The final step is termination or dismissal. So if the person was found guilty in a court of law of stealing money, and they got a prison sentence out of it, well, obviously, the school district has every authority to terminate that individual. So they wouldn't go through the warning steps or anything like that. You jump right into that one. The two steps in between, from official reprimand to termination, is you can fine the teacher, although that doesn't happen in reality. I don't know of any states that have teachers fined, or they could be suspended for a week or whatever without pay. And then, of course, non-renewal. So that concludes all of our objectives. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. I think we will be in good shape for your fourth quiz, which will be on Monday at 6 o'clock. And you guys have been doing a great job. We've not had a glitch so far. So I hope the electric stays running there, and there's not a storm that takes out power, because that would be a problem. But if it is, text me, and then we'll figure it out later. Okay. With that, we shall see you later, sister.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. See
And
you.
I'll be shipping that YouTube video out to you fairly soon.
Yeah. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Have a good one.